Blood on the Range. The name of the book is Blood on the Range. It was published in 1954 by Graphic. It actually is a reprint of a Western hardcover from 1939, and that was published by Dodge back in the day. I don't know who did the cover. It's not credited, but I do know who wrote it, and that was Eli Colter. So Blood on the Range is about Gage Garden. He's got a nice ranch going on, and someone's coming in from the hills and is first killing his cows and then killing his horses, and now they've kidnapped his girl, and he goes in, he's going to hunt them down and bring some justice to the area. Yes, our hero's name is Gage. Everybody in this book has a ridiculous name. There's Sharky and Cookie and Weenie. That's a name a cowboy would be proud of. And Doe and Salt River Charlie. Clearly, Colter had fun with those names. Gage goes and chases one of the hoodlums down. Not the one who actually did the kidnapping, but he goes and chases someone else into the desert. There's an interesting scene where he meets this guy at the edge of the desert who breeds horses just for the desert, and Colter goes into explicit detail about what these horses have that's different from a regular horse, how their hooves are splayed and the physique and things. And so he takes one of these horses and rides off into the desert and meets the hoodlum, and they have a little showdown, and the hoodlum ends up shooting himself in the head because he doesn't want to be taken back. He's so scared of the main bad guy that he would rather commit suicide than be hauled back and face the law and face the consequences of his failure. And that's just all within like the first chapter. So it goes nuts from then on. There's an escape in a swamp. I don't know how there's a swamp near a desert, but whatever. There's also mountains. The landscape is it's a cornucopia of landscapes in this book, all somehow jammed into this unnamed region of the United States. There's some mistaken identity, lots of holdups, lots of innocent people getting shot and killed, almost depressingly so. And of course, there's a lost cache of several $1,000s hidden somewhere that some crooks stole a long time ago, and everybody's still looking for it. Who's got it? Who hid it? And everybody thinks everybody else knows where it is. But only one person knows, and I'm not going to spoil that ending. I'm going to read just like the tiniest of excerpts. This is describing the desert. The Devil's Dance Floor, as the desert was called in this book. To those who are not worthy of her favors, and who cross her grim borders, the desert ruthlessly and relentlessly deals death, for there is no patience in her soul for either weaklings or those who will not stop to learn her moods and cater to her whims. But to those few who love her, she can give with tenderness and generosity. To such men like old Shark Holy, she can give of her rich secrets, her beauty, and sometimes the gold that men hold dear. So this book was written by Eli Colter, and you might be surprised to know that Eli is actually a woman. Eli Colter's birth name was May Eliza Frost. Eli was not just her byline, but also the nickname she preferred over May Eliza. All her friends and family called her Eli. She was born in Portland, Oregon in 1890. At the age of 13, she suddenly lost her eyesight. Eventually, she regained it, and shortly after, she decided that she'd try to make a career out of writing. As she wrote those first stories, she played organ and piano in movie theaters to pay the bills. Her first story was published in 1918 under a different name. I'm afraid I couldn't find the magazine, the story title, or the pseudonym. But 4 years later, she sold her next story. That was in 1922, and it was to Black Mask magazine. It was her first Eli Colter story. And many cite this publication as the true start of her successful writing career. She wrote dozens and dozens of stories during those early years. As the case with many authors, her rejections outweighed her acceptance letters, but after honing her craft and playing that piano and organ in the theater, the rejections dwindled, and she sold more stories than she got returned. Colter was extremely prolific. She became something of a pulpster queen, writing for weird tales, strange stories, action stories, ace-high western, Wild West Weekly, true detective mysteries, and others. She wrote for the slicks, too, like Liberty Magazine and the Saturday Evening Post. She was one of the few pulp authors who got to have her byline on more than one story in an issue. Most writers had to assume a false second name if they had two stories in the same issue. Colter did not like to stay in one genre lane. Not only did that allow her to flex her creativity, but it also let her sell more stories to more publishers. She composed detective, western, horror, and weird fiction, all with great success. She even co-wrote a jungle adventure memoir with a woman who lived in Sumatra. And some have argued that Colter was the first to cross-pollinate the Western with speculative fiction and created the original weird Western stories before Robert E. Howard and Charles G. Finney developed the genre. Her weird tales stories were popular with readers. On more than one occasion, her story was voted the best in the issue. Her Westerns were popular enough that she was able to step outside the pulps and get 7 of her stories published as hardcover novels. My paperback, Blood on the Range, is a reprint of one of these. She did not receive all accolades, though. Northwest Books, a review of contemporary books for librarians, said Colter's novels were, quote, tritely romantic and daringly improbable, and of negligent worth, and lacking, quote, suitability as supplementary reading, with an excess of shooting and drinking. Now, that last remark probably attracted more readers than repelled. Colter must have been a bit conservative in real life. Several of her weird tales stories espouse more traditional religious values and problematic racial ones. She once wrote to the magazine, "Let me say thank the gods for a magazine that steers clear of sex rot and its ramifications, yet produces stories that hold the reader seeking thrills." I guess she never looked at the covers. However, she had no problems with violence in fiction. Her own stories are overstuffed with gunned down and murdered folks. She shocked readers by having her villains kill innocent women, which was a somewhat chivalrous fiction no-no at the time. Colter wanted authenticity in her westerns, so she posted ads asking for real cowboys to come and be interviewed by her. A retired cowhand called Black Wheeler, a.k.a. Poker Face Bill, maybe that's where she got some of her cowboy names for her books. Anyway, he collaborated with her on a number of stories. He'd give the plot, and she'd knock it into publishable shape. Wheeler went on to write stories solo, but he didn't reach the same success as Colter. Another cowboy, John Hawkins, did more than share tales of life on the range. He charmed her, and they were married in 1926. But the magic didn't last long. Colter and Hawkins divorced less than 10 years later. Not long after that, Eli Colter married another man, a writer named Glenn Fagaldi, and the two moved from Portland to Azusa, California, not far outside of L.A. There they built a home out of stone on a large estate they called Jack Rabbit Acres. The home was fitted with a pipe organ so Colter could play, and featured murals that Colter painted herself. They invited other Western writers to visit and write, and turned Jack Rabbit Acres into something of a writer's colony. Colter and Fagalde, who wrote under the pseudonym Don Alviso, worked in tandem. They had stories show up in alternating issues of Strange Stories for several months. 1 month Colter, the next month Alviso, back to Colter, and so on and so forth. Seemed to be a steady household paycheck. Who knows how much they collaborated on their stories. Fagalde, like Poker Face Bill before him, didn't really sell much without Colter. One of Eli Colter's Western stories, Something to Brag About, was published in the Saturday Evening Post. It was made into a movie titled The Untamed Breed in 1948. And not long after that, Colter stopped writing entirely. Her final story was published in 1952. She was 62 years old and had published more than 300 stories and serials over her career. In her post-writing career, Colter did some landscape paintings, though that doesn't seem to have been a source of income for her. Her husband Glenn passed away in 1957, and not long after that she moved to an apartment in L.A. She lived until the ripe old age of 93, passing away in 1984. But what she did with the 27 years of her life between her last story and her last breath, I do not know. Perhaps she just enjoyed retirement. That sort of retiree life where she really had no desire to write, or at least didn't produce anything that she shared with the rest of the world, I think sometimes surprises me. You think of a writer as they're writing because they are passionate about something, that they have, this urge to put words to paper and tell a story and create a world and then share it with other people. But it seems like she just was not doing that. Writing was just a job for her. And once she didn't have to write anymore, she didn't. Colter is sort of a reference in one of Thomas Pynchon's novels. If you're familiar with him, he could not be more different than Eli Colter and his style of writing, sort of postmodernist, comical adventure. He is an example of someone who, he's in his 80s and just published his latest novel. And there's rumors that there's more to come, that he just isn't done. And so he's someone who could have retired decades ago, but just hasn't, and clearly has this passion to keep writing. I don't think that he's doing it for the money. He's doing it because he loves it. Whereas Colter clearly was doing it for the money. She didn't need to keep on going. She was done. Hollywood bought that film, and she probably could have lived off the rights of that for a while, as well as, the publications of paperback versions of her novels. So how did I feel about Blood on the Range? I was pretty disappointed by it, to be honest. It was not great. It actually was a good story. I liked the twists. I liked the intrigue, but it was so clunky. The prose was just awkward with these overwritten sentences. And there wasn't much beauty about it. And the thrills just didn't grip me. So sorry, Blood on the Range. I'm going to leave you on the range. It's not a book I fell in love with. I had tried reading a couple of Colter's other things, some of her short stories in Weird Tales and Strange Stories, and they were just as clunky as Blood on the Range. So I don't think that she's going to be an author that I will revisit anytime soon, if ever. So I'm glad she had her time in the sun. I'm glad she found her success, and I'm happy for the people that love her stuff, but alas, I'm not one of them, and that's okay. Are you a big Eli Colter fan? Are you sitting and stewing in your seat watching this video thinking, how dare you besmirch the name of my Western mistress of prose. Or maybe you agree with me and yeah, she ain't all that. Leave your comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. And see you next time.